It was my first summer working as a lifeguard at Pinecrest Community Pool, and I was equal parts excited and terrified. The job seemed straightforward enough. Watch the water, blow the whistle when kids ran on the deck, and hopefully never have to actually save anyone from drowning. But from the moment I met my assigned partner for the season, I knew this summer would be anything but ordinary. His name was Eli, and he had been guarding at Pinecrest for 3 summers already. He moved with this easy confidence that made the red swim trunks and white tank top with Lifeguard emblazoned across the chest look like high fashion. Meanwhile, I felt like an imposter in the identical uniform, constantly adjusting my whistle and wondering if anyone could tell this was my first real job. "You'll get used to it," Eli said on our first morning shift together, catching me fidgeting with my rescue tube for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. "By August, you'll be so comfortable you'll forget you're even working." His smile was reassuring, reaching all the way to his eyes, warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he laughed. And he laughed often, especially at my nervous questions about protocol and procedures. The pool itself was nothing special, a standard L-shaped community pool with a diving board at the deep end and a gradually sloping shallow section for the kids. But under the bright June sun, with the water reflecting dancing patterns onto the concrete deck, it felt like the center of the universe. The sounds of summer surrounded us constantly, children shrieking with delight, teenagers trying to act cool while secretly having fun, parents calling out reminders about sunscreen. The scent of chlorine mixed with coconut suntan lotion became the unofficial perfume of my days. Eli and I fell into an easy rhythm during that first week. We'd rotate positions every hour, one of us in the elevated chair scanning the water while the other patrolled the deck. During our breaks, we'd sit in the staff room comparing notes on the regular pool goers and sharing stories. I learned that Eli was studying marine biology at the state university, that he had a golden retriever named Neptune, and that he could hold his breath underwater for nearly 2 minutes, a fact he demonstrated one morning before the pool opened, leaving me counting anxiously until his head broke the surface with a triumphant grin. "You need to trust your training," he told me after I admitted I was still nervous about having to perform an actual rescue. "The drills might seem boring, but they're in your muscle memory when you need them." He suggested we come in early a few days a week to practice together, and I eagerly agreed, partly because I wanted to improve my skills, but mostly because I enjoyed his company more than I cared to admit, even to myself. Our first training session was basic enough. We reviewed the standard procedures, recognizing signs of distress, approaching a struggling swimmer, proper techniques for supporting their weight in the water. Eli was patient but thorough, correcting my form with gentle hands on my shoulders or wrists. "You're stronger than you think," he said when I struggled to demonstrate how I'd carry someone to the edge. "It's all about leverage and momentum, not just muscle." By our 3rd training session, I was feeling more confident. The movements were becoming second nature, and Eli's praise made me stand a little taller. "You're a natural," he said after I successfully completed a simulated rescue of our training dummy. "I think you're ready for something more challenging." The morning of our 4th training session was particularly beautiful. We arrived at 6:30, an hour and a half before the pool opened to the public. The water was perfectly still, reflecting the pink and gold of the sunrise. Steam rose gently from the surface, creating an almost mystical atmosphere. Eli had been quiet on the drive over, unusually thoughtful, and I wondered if something was bothering him. "I want to try something different today," he said as we set our bags down on the guard table. "Real rescues aren't like the textbook examples. People panic, they fight you, conditions aren't perfect. I think we should practice a more realistic scenario." I nodded, trying to project confidence even as my stomach tightened with apprehension. "What did you have in mind?" "I want to simulate a struggling swimmer, a real one, not the passive dummy we've been using. You'll need to approach correctly, secure me, and bring me to safety, all while I'm moving unpredictably." His eyes met mine, serious but with a glint of something else, challenge, maybe, or excitement. "Think you can handle it?" "Of course," I said, perhaps too quickly. "That makes sense. We should practice with real conditions." Eli smiled then, that same warm smile that had put me at ease on our first day. "Don't worry, I won't make it too hard on you. Just hard enough to make it count." He pulled his tank top over his head, revealing the smooth planes of his chest and shoulders. I looked away, suddenly very interested in adjusting my rescue tube. We started with a few warm-up drills, reviewing the proper approach and hold techniques. The morning air was cool against my skin, making the water feel almost warm in contrast. Eli demonstrated how a panicking swimmer might behave, showing me the flailing arms and desperate grabs that could pull both victim and rescuer underwater if not managed properly. "Ready to try the full scenario?" he asked after about 20 minutes of practice. When I nodded, he continued, "I'll start in the deep end. I'll be acting like I'm struggling, really struggling, not just pretending. Your job is to recognize the situation, approach safely, secure me, and get me to the edge. Don't hold back because it's me. Treat it like a real emergency." I took a deep breath, centering myself. "Got it. Real scenario, real response. One more thing," Eli added, his voice dropping slightly. "I might take you under with me for a moment. That happens in real rescues. Just stay calm and remember your training. Trust yourself and trust me." Before I could respond, he dove into the deep end, surfacing about 15 feet from the edge. I watched from my position, waiting for him to begin the simulation. For a few seconds, he simply treaded water normally, looking around as a regular swimmer might. Then, without warning, his expression changed. His eyes widened with panic, his arms began to slap at the water, and he started to bob up and down, gasping dramatically when his head was above water. Even knowing it was a drill, my heart rate spiked. I grabbed my rescue tube and jumped in, using the strong, diagonal approach we'd practiced. "I'm a lifeguard," I called out as I neared him. "I'm here to help you. Grab this float." But instead of reaching for the tube as we'd rehearsed, Eli's arms windmilled wildly, one hand catching my shoulder and pushing down hard. I felt myself being forced underwater, the sudden pressure taking me by surprise. Through the blur of bubbles, I could see Eli above me, his form distorted by the water but his grip firm on my shoulder. My initial instinct was to fight, to push back up toward air and light. But then I remembered his words, "Trust yourself and trust me." I forced myself to relax, to feel the situation rather than react blindly to it. I maneuvered the rescue tube between us, using it as a buffer while I positioned myself to the side, out of his direct reach but close enough to support him. The seconds underwater stretched, my lungs beginning to burn slightly. Just as I was about to make my move to surface, Eli's grip changed. Instead of pushing me down, his hand slid to my upper arm, pulling me up alongside him. We broke the surface together, my gasping breath louder than I'd intended. "Good," he said, his voice calm despite the intensity of the moment before. "You didn't panic, but you hesitated at first. In a real situation, that could be dangerous." His face was close to mine, water droplets clinging to his eyelashes. "Let's try again, but this time, be more decisive." We reset and ran through the scenario 3 more times. Each time, Eli found a different way to challenge me, grabbing my rescue tube and pulling it away, clutching at my arms in simulated panic, and once, wrapping his arms around my torso in what he called the drowning hug, a desperate move that untrained swimmers often attempt that can drag rescuers down with them. By our final drill, I was physically tired but mentally sharper. I approached with confidence, anticipated his grab, and smoothly transitioned into a cross-chest carry that neutralized his ability to pull me under. As I towed him to the edge, I felt his body relax against mine, no longer simulating resistance. "Perfect," he said as we reached the wall. "That's exactly how it should be done." His praise warmed me more than it should have, and I found myself grinning stupidly as we pulled ourselves out of the pool. We sat on the edge, feet dangling in the water, catching our breath. The sun had fully risen now, casting long shadows across the deck and warming the air around us. Droplets of water traced paths down Eli's shoulders and chest, catching the light like tiny crystals. "There's one more scenario we should practice," he said after a moment, his voice quieter than before. "It's rare, but it happens. A swimmer who's already unconscious when you reach them." I nodded, trying to look professional despite my sudden awareness of how close we were sitting, our shoulders nearly touching. "That makes sense. What do you want me to do?" "I'll be floating face down in the deep end. Your job is to approach, turn me over, check for breathing, and get me to the edge as quickly as possible. In a real situation, you'd start rescue breathing immediately, but we'll skip that part for now." He paused, then added, "This one's important. In a real emergency, these seconds count the most." Without waiting for my response, he slid back into the water and swam to the center of the deep end. I watched as he took a deep breath, then deliberately turned face down in the water, arms and legs spread slightly, perfectly mimicking an unconscious swimmer. I didn't hesitate this time. I entered the water with my rescue tube, approaching quickly but carefully. Reaching Eli, I secured the tube under his arms and turned him over in one smooth motion, checking his face as I'd been trained to do. His eyes were closed, his features relaxed in simulated unconsciousness. Supporting his head above water, I began to tow him toward the edge, using the cross-chest carry we'd just practiced. What I wasn't prepared for was how different it felt to hold him this way, one arm across his chest, his head resting against my shoulder. Despite the seriousness of the drill, I was acutely aware of his heartbeat against my forearm, the warmth of his skin despite the cool water. I focused on my breathing, on the mechanical aspects of the rescue, trying to ignore the confusing flutter in my stomach. We were about halfway to the edge when, without warning, Eli's body tensed. His hand caught my wrist, and suddenly we were both underwater, spinning in a controlled descent. I hadn't been expecting it, but this time I didn't panic. I kept one arm firmly around him, using my free hand to guide us back toward the surface. But Eli held us under for a moment longer than necessary, his body now turned toward mine, his eyes open and meeting my gaze through the crystalline blue water. Time seemed to slow, the world above us forgotten. The usual sounds of the pool, birds calling, distant traffic, the hum of the filter system, all vanished, replaced by the profound silence that only exists underwater. In that suspended moment, with the sun filtering through the water in rippling bands of light, something passed between us, an understanding, a connection, a question asked and answered without words. His hand was still around my wrist, but it was no longer restraining. It was simply holding, almost caressing. I was acutely aware of every sensation, the pressure of the water around us, the slight burn in my lungs, the points of contact between our bodies, the way his hair floated around his face like a dark halo. Just as my lungs began to demand air more insistently, Eli kicked upward, bringing us both to the surface. We emerged gasping, still locked in the rescue position, but now face to face, close enough that I could see individual droplets on his eyelashes. "You did well," he said, his voice low and slightly breathless. "You stayed calm, even when I took you by surprise. You held me under longer that time," I said, not quite a question, but not quite an accusation either. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. "I wanted to see if you trusted me." His eyes held mine, searching. "Did you?" "Yes," I admitted, surprised by how true it was. "I did. I do." We completed the rescue drill, making our way to the edge where Eli demonstrated how to safely get an unconscious victim out of the water. But something had shifted between us, a new awareness humming in the small space between our bodies as we worked. His instructions were professional as always, but his hands lingered a moment longer than necessary when showing me the correct grip, and his eyes returned to mine more frequently. As we gathered our equipment, preparing for the pool to open to the public, Eli paused. "You know, the most important thing about being a good lifeguard isn't the technical skills, though those matter. It's about being fully present, seeing what's really happening, not just what you expect to see." He was arranging kickboards on the rack, not looking at me as he spoke. It's about recognizing when something is different from the usual pattern, and having the courage to respond to what's actually in front of you, not what the textbook says should be there. I wasn't entirely sure we were still talking about lifeguarding, but I nodded. "I think I'm starting to understand that." He looked up then, that warm smile returning. "Good, because I have a feeling this summer is going to be full of unexpected situations." He picked up his bag, slung it over his shoulder, and added, "Same time tomorrow? I have a few more advanced techniques I think you're ready for." The way he said advanced techniques sent a ripple of anticipation through me that had nothing to do with lifeguard training. "I'll be here," I promised, already looking forward to what the next morning might bring. As we walked toward the staff room to clock in for our regular shift, the first early morning lap swimmers arriving in the parking lot, I realized that Eli had been right that very first day. I was getting used to being a lifeguard, the responsibility, the vigilance, the constant awareness. But what I hadn't expected was how quickly I'd get used to him, to the partnership that was evolving between us, to the trust that had been tested and confirmed in those moments underwater. The summer stretched ahead, full of long days under the sun, watching over swimmers and watching each other. And if our training sessions continued to blur the line between professional development and something more personal, well, that was just another skill to master, another depth to explore. After all, the most important lessons rarely happen on the surface. Total _char_count, 17,936.